Hi, thank you for joining. We're here today to talk about career transitions, how to prepare, and how to know when it's time. I mean, this is an issue that clients come and talk to me about so frequently. I mean, my business is all about helping people figure out what's the next step and find their career fire again and find what really lights them up again. And so a lot of times that's about, something's not fitting well anymore. And how do I get to the place where I'm comfortable and lit up again? And so we very frequently we'll talk about knowing when it's time to go or knowing when it's time to make a change, and how to prepare for it. So I'm happy to be able to talk to you about it today. I'm live, but I know very well that many of you are watching it recorded, and that's great too. So let me just go ahead and dive into to a little bit of the background here. Change is one of those things that can feel really threatening. It can feel really uncomfortable because you don't know what's next. You're jumping into a bit of the unknown. And for most of us, that kind of a transition can be scary, especially if, really what we're focused on today is something isn't right anymore and you're looking to take on that change. Similar dynamics if the change is being forced on you or some other situation that so many of us have found ourselves in. But a lot of this is about you're taking it on, which is interesting to take on that change and take on that discomfort and jump into the unknown. But that's where growth happens, is when you take that chance and when you get uncomfortable and really take that on. You've heard me say that before. That's where growth happens. And done right, that's where those huge career leaps come in. So I'm going to advocate for taking it on. Don't let fear hold you back. Don't feel bad or feel like you're not up to it. If you're feeling fear over it, it's normal because you're jumping into the unknown or considering it. But it's important to take that on and not let that get in your way. And I have some ideas on how you can do that too. I have found for myself the times of my greatest growth are when I get uncomfortable. And in fact, there have been times where if I felt like I'm not pushing my edge, especially when I was in the corporate world, if I wasn't pushing my edge, if I was getting a little too comfortable, it made me nervous because it felt like I wasn't growing. And there would be times where I would literally put on my calendar, what are you doing to get uncomfortable today? What are you doing to take a risk? And make sure I was pushing myself there. So, I'm a big advocate for it. But how do you do it? Like, how can you start figuring out what's the issue? One way to start figuring out, a really good tool that I offer is this career satisfaction assessment. It's available on my website, or you can go to the link on LinkedIn. And what it does is break down the 8 pillars of career satisfaction. What are the things that are either working for you or working against you? So it's a great place to start if you're trying to figure out what the problem is. Is it making a difference? Is it that you're not getting the growth that you need? Is it that your balance is out of whack? Like this, it's a great place for you to start. It won't provide the answer, but it's really thought-provoking and can help you get to the answer. So, and it's really important to think through the reasons that you're considering leaving. And that's where these 8 pillars can come in. You have to identify what the problem is to make sure you're solving the right thing. That's really important because, you may think it's one thing. You may think it's a problem with your boss, or it's a problem with the nature of the work, or you're not challenged, whatever it is. But if you're not clear on what the problem truly is, you're not going to know if you're solving for the right thing. So it's interesting. I took a look at, did a little bit of research, and there was an interesting article in the Harvard Business Review with some of the top reasons that the question was really, what are the reasons that would prompt you to start looking for something else, start looking to make a change. And a big one that they mentioned was your current situation is no longer encouraging your growth. And that doesn't mean that nobody around you is encouraging it. What it may mean is the situation isn't encouraging it. Think about it. If you are, you're in a situation where maybe you've plateaued or you've maxed out a little bit and you're not flexing new muscles, it may be time to put yourself in a different situation. Another reason that you might think about it is if you've achieved what you set out to achieve. The reasons that you took this current position or took on this challenge, you have accomplished them. You've grown in the areas that you wanted to. You've sort of, put the stakes on the map, if you will, of what you've accomplished and the things that you can build on and the things that you can cite and stress and lean on in order to get to the next level. If you've already achieved those things, that may be a reason to think about what's the next move. Here's a big one. If you're actively looking for ways to avoid your job, and what that means is like, you may have heard the term like quietly resign or that kind of thing. It may be as simple as like, instead of jumping out of the bed every morning, you are hitting the snooze button. That may be an indication that you're kind of trying to avoid the job. Or if you find yourself procrastinating on key tasks, if you find that it's taking you a lot longer to get things done because you're not being efficient, if you find yourself on social media or some other way of procrastinating, it's like you got to check in with yourself and see what's behind that. If it's because you're looking for ways to avoid doing the tasks at hand, or your job is no longer engaging to you, it's something to look at. Now, again, we're not getting to solutions. We're just looking at what might be the things that would prompt action. Another gut check on it, if you will, that may tell you it's time to start looking is if you regularly, frequently approach your work with a sense of exhaustion or even dread, if it's sucking your energy to even think about it, where it may have lit you up before, like that's a sign. Your gut tells you a lot. How you react to things, how you feel about things tells you a lot. And another reason that's cited in Harvard Business Review and is really clear to me is if your workplace has become in some way unhealthy or even toxic. And unhealthy may mean there's such a level of imbalance, the workload, the hours, if it's punishing enough that it's dangerous for your health or well-being, that's something you have to pay attention to and make a change. And if it's a toxic working environment and things are kind of abusive there, or toxic from the standpoint that your ethical alarm is going up, that maybe you're being asked to do something that just isn't right for you and your values, those are things to pay attention to also. And so if some of these things are resonating for you and you're thinking, yeah, these things are true for me, that's not necessarily a decision-making factor, but it may be time to start thinking about what your next steps are. So there's different possible solutions. Leaving your job is one, but it's only one. A lot of times there's changes that you can make within your current job. And, when I say leaving is one, but only one, again, that goes to making sure before you take on the search, before you think about leaving, certainly before you make a decision, make sure you're solving the right problem, because wherever you go, you take yourself with you. So if there's something about your own skill set or your own self-awareness or your own dynamic working with others, there may be things that can be addressed there before you take on the change that will make you that much more successful. And, sometimes making those changes that we can control can change enough in a situation where, you no longer think about leaving. So I think, looking inward is really a healthy thing to do always, but also in helping you identify what's the problem to make sure you're solving for the right thing. So, I mentioned that leaving is one option. Staying and making some changes where you are is certainly another one. That may be looking at other options. If you're in a big corporation, there may be different business units that you could move to, or different areas of accountability that might be more engaging to you and might be really helpful for your long-term career development. So, very often your boss, your HR department, a mentor will be really happy to engage in that conversation with you, because it will retain talent. It will enable you to contribute at an even higher level. So you're not in it alone. There are people who are definitely willing to engage and help you solve these problems. And I mentioned at every step, checking in on how you feel. Checking in on how you react to things is very telling how you really feel. Okay, so those are some of the ways to think through, is it time? And again, even if some of these things are feeling like, yeah, maybe it's time to start looking, that doesn't mean it's time to leave. It means it may be time to explore. So how do you get ready for that? How do you prepare yourself? And there's 3 different ways that are great to think about. One is preparing yourself. The second is preparing your network. And then there's preparing sort of the public facing presence, if you will, the public persona. And we'll talk about each of those. So when it comes to preparing yourself, that even is in a couple of different areas. That's looking at, what do you offer? And it may have been a really long time since you took stock of what your skills are, what your experience is, kind of what's your personal value proposition. What are the things you offer? What are the things that you love? Where are you at your best? What are the challenges you love to take on? That will enable someone to see where you could fit in their organization and how you could benefit their business. And it's an exercise that I go through with clients a lot, because it may have been a long time since you reviewed your resume, did anything more than add your latest job on LinkedIn. Like, really sit back and take inventory of who you are and what you offer. That can unlock a lot of possibilities. So that's something that I absolutely recommend doing. I also think it's great to give yourself permission, because you never know. If you think about, what would a year from now, 5 years from now, what are the dynamics of a situation that would be absolutely ideal for you? That might bring up possibilities that you never would have thought of. And again, it might be a really long time since you thought about that. I have clients that have worked towards a certain goal for many years. It might be 15 or 20 years, like the big career goal that had many steps. And when you get closer, even when you get there, sometimes it's not quite as satisfying as you thought it might be, because you've changed a lot since you set that original goal, or the market may have changed, or your industry may have changed. So sometimes it's good to really think about these things along the way. But if you haven't, it's never too late. It's always a good time to take stock of what you've got, take stock of what you want, and see what possibilities that opens up for you. Okay, so another way to prepare yourself is to craft your story, I'll call it. And really, what you want to think about is a couple of different areas. Bullet points of the things you want to share. This is not your resume. This is, how do you talk about your background? How do you talk about your accomplishments? How do you talk about your skills? What makes you unique? So you kind of want to craft that story. You'll hear some people talk about it like an elevator pitch. If you run into someone on the elevator, how do you tell that story? But then you want to be able to get in depth too. And preparing is the best way for you to quickly prioritize, encapsulate the story, and deliver it in a way that's really digestible and highly impactful. Most of us can't do that. It doesn't come across like ballet, really well choreographed, if you haven't prepared it. So it's worth the time. It really is. Another thing to prepare is, beyond just your story, think a little bit about, what are the areas of concern? What's the question, like it's in the back of your mind? Oh, I'm hoping they don't ask me about that. Be prepared for it, because what it does is, not only does it allow you to address the question, which I tend to think if it's in the back of your mind, don't ask me this, don't ask me this. Not only is that blocking some of your energy from really being present and at your best, but sometimes just having that thought out there can draw the question. Be ready for it, and then you'll be relaxed. If you're not sure how best to do that, I actually, the episode of my podcast that's dropping on Monday, the first episode of the second season, is my guest is a communications expert, and she talks about just that, how to craft your story and how to address the questions that you hope you don't get. So listen in on that. That can give you some tips. So that's definitely something to prepare for, is what do you want to say? And, again, that will enable you to be eloquent and succinct and not go too far. Another thing to think about is, what's the mindset that you want to lean into? And by that, I mean, how do you want to show up? It's almost like if you were the brand, what do you want them thinking of you? Do you want them thinking about someone who is strong in operations and can bring things up across the finish line, or who is very strategic and innovative? Like, think about what's the impression that you want to leave as part of crafting your story and how you want to show up. And you want to do all of this well in advance of having an interview on the schedule. It'll be really natural to you. And something I recommend is, once you get comfortable with the story and the things that you want to talk about, say it out loud. It makes a difference versus just reading it on paper. And you all have, you've got your phone. I'm sure, oh, there's my dogs. You've got your phone by your side most of the time. You can do a voice memo. You can record it on Zoom. Listen to yourself saying it out. It makes a big difference. So once you've decided, like, you're thinking about this and you've decided that it is time to initiate a search and sort of activate that, that doesn't mean you've decided to leave. But one thing that I would say is, be really mindful of how you manage yourself. And because you're in a situation now where you're thinking about putting some of your energy into a search, but you also want to be productive and you want to be delivering high quality work where you are. And that gets harder once you've asking the questions or decided to leave. So make sure that you are managing yourself through that. And one of the challenges is, once you've decided, like, if you've decided, no, it's time for me to go, so that means that you've decided that there's some things that don't fit for you anymore, or things that you don't like there anymore. And once you're focused on that, that's what you're going to see. And that may perpetuate a situation where you feel less than satisfied. So just be aware of that so that you can manage yourself through it. Another thing to be aware of is that if you've decided to take on a search, it takes some time. So you may want to carve out that time in your schedule, in your day, in your weeks, and figure out how you're going to handle that. Okay, so that's sort of some thoughts on how you prepare yourself. The next area that you want to prepare is your network. Your network is where the action is much of the time now. There's certainly, there's working with recruiters, there's doing research, there's posting on LinkedIn, those kinds of things. Really, where it happens is your network. Even if you see the perfect job out there, a really good way to tap into it is to find out, who do you know at that company? Who could you connect with in order to get it? So activating your network is really important. And there's no time like the present to make that happen. If you haven't been keeping your network warm, don't worry about it. You can activate it. But in the ideal world, you do it before you need it, because then there's no pressure and you feel really comfortable tapping into your network. And what I recommend is sort of a phased approach, starting with a small group of people that know you well, that you can brainstorm with and whatever. And maybe that's 3 or 5 people, and you talk to them about what you're thinking and what you may want to do once you've done that brainstorming about the ideal role, that kind of thing. And you can talk a little bit about the things you're thinking about and see if they have any ideas. Talking these things out with a thought partner is tremendous in sparking new ideas and seeing new possibilities. So that's a great way to go. The next step might be, once you've consolidated some of that thought, maybe it's a little more crystallized, You can go out to some mentors or colleagues, people that you used to work with, and talk to them a little bit, see if they know anybody, sort of take it to the next step. At that point, you're almost like taking your story out for a test drive, because you've gotten it to a point where it's ready for prime time, ready to take out and start shaping. And then you can start, with who do you know? Who do you know at a certain company? Asking anybody that you reach out to who they know, who else that you should speak to, that kind of thing. So I recommend a pretty systematic approach of trying to reach out to a certain number of people a week and tracking your progress and setting some metrics for yourself. So, it can feel, if it's too nebulous, it can feel like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to people, but I'm not getting anywhere. Whereas if you set goals for yourself, I'm going to reach out to 5 people a week, say, that kind of thing, and tracking who you spoke to so that you know how to follow up and you know what your next steps are, you can really track your progress and feel a sense of accomplishment, as opposed to this sort of nebulous, I feel like I haven't done anything. So, setting goals and knowing what you can track is really a good way to go. And one final thought for now on networking, and this one's really important: don't get in your own way. I see so often clients, and I did this myself in a previous life. You can get all in your head about, oh, I haven't talked to this person in a couple of years, or they were so much higher up in the organization than I was. They don't want to hear from me. They might not even remember me. What do they think of me? Try not to make it mean anything. Just take action. Think about, how would you feel if somebody that you haven't talked to for a long time reached out to you? You'd probably be happy to hear from them. And in general, if you're just checking in with somebody or asking for something that's really easy for them to deliver on, like, do you know anybody at this company? Or I'm trying to reach this person. Can you create just an electronic introduction and I'll take it from there. If it's something easy, people like to help people. So don't hesitate to reach out. You can always ask them, is there anything that I can do for you, so that it's not one way? But don't get in your own way about that. Don't get all in your own head that they don't want to hear from you. Let them decide if they want to hear from you or not. Likewise, if you reach out to someone and don't hear back, don't make that mean anything. It may mean that they didn't see your email or give a reminder again. I do a lot of networking, obviously, for my business now that I'm out there helping clients. And I have a rule when I'm reaching out for a contact, or if there's a time when there's a space that opens up on my client roster because somebody has finished their coaching for the time, I may reach out to people, and I'll reach out once. And if I don't hear back from them about a week later, I'll, put a note at the top of the email, if it's an email, and say, just popping this up to the top of your email box. And then a week later, I'll say, hey, just wanted to close the loop here. No problem. You haven't gotten back to me, whatever. A lot of times the third message is the one that I hear back from. And if I had gotten in my own way after, the first or second, I never would have made that contact. So lack of information doesn't have to mean anything. So don't let it get in your way. Okay. So then the third area to prepare for is your public stuff, I'll call it, which is really your resume, but maybe even more importantly now is your LinkedIn profile, because people are going to see that before they ever see your resume, and oftentimes before they even talk to you. And that's what will get picked up by people who are searching for people to fill positions. And it's not a person that's searching those resumes, it's artificial intelligence. So it's really important to make sure you've got the right keywords in there so that you get picked up, to make sure that you've got the right verbs, that you've got the right accomplishments cited. So go through your LinkedIn and take a look at if that is ready. And a great way to go is take a look at people who have the jobs you may want to have. Take a look at their profile. It's right there for you. And you can pattern yours after that if you think it's effective. There's also courses and things out there to help you update your LinkedIn profile. So there's a lot of resources if you feel like yours maybe isn't as sharp as it needs to be. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I've gotten some questions about these kinds of topics. I just want to serve them up and let you know my thoughts on them, my responses on them. And if you have additional questions, if you're not watching this live and you're thinking about something else, feel free to reach out to me. You can always find me through LinkedIn or through my website. You can contact me that way. If there's a question that I'm not addressing, feel free to get that to me so that I can get you an answer. Okay. So one question that I get a lot is, how do I keep my boss from finding out that I'm looking? And sometimes this can be a little bit tricky because if you're in a very specialized industry, it may be a small world. Or so you have to be a little careful about what's your public facing information. You don't necessarily want to turn on the function of, I'm looking for work. People will find you whether you are or not. So if you're not being public with this, be careful about that. But in general, if you don't want your boss to find out, be careful who else you're speaking to. It's not, you may have your close colleagues at work, but you want to be really selective who you are speaking to because word gets out. But as you're being careful that your boss doesn't find out, you probably want to be thinking about, what are you going to do if they do find out? Like, this could kind of be one of those questions you hope you don't get asked, but it's possible. The world is small. And so you want to be prepared for what you're going to say if your boss does find out. And it could be something, if you have something specific that you want to answer, that's fine. But it could be something as sort of general as, I just think it's good practice to know what else is out there, to make sure that I'm keeping my eyes on where the market is and what growth opportunities are out there. It doesn't have to be anything more specific than that. You can decide how specific you want to be. Another question that I got about this subject was, should I tell my boss that I'm looking? And this is one that there's no right answer. You have to sort of trust your judgment on this. I would say some reasons to tell your boss is if you think they will be supportive, if you think they can be helpful in helping you find the next situation, or if you're getting signs that maybe your job's going to be eliminated or there's going to be changes in the company, that may make a more comfortable situation. But you really have to trust your gut on that because it can be a little bit of a risk to tell your boss. I've gotten questions about timing of looking, like all hiring stops during the summer and during the holidays. Like, how do I know when to start this? Things definitely slow down July and August. Things definitely slow down between Thanksgiving and New Year's, but that doesn't mean everything stops. And there's a lot of work for you to be doing sort of behind the scenes to be really ready. I mean, think about what we talked about, preparing your message, preparing your paper, if you will, your LinkedIn profile on things, preparing your network. So there's a lot of planning things you can be doing before you get actually out there with a full-on search. So I would say don't let the timing stop you. And you only need one job. So, things take a while. There may be something posted. You may be networking or connecting with people even over the holidays. You don't know what the company habits are, but I would say don't worry if you don't hear back, because that would be normal, but you may. So, there's no magic to this timing. You're looking for one job and a company may have a need even at the end of the year. But in general, things do slow down over the summer. Things do slow down over the holidays. The end of the year, and depending on the company, like a lot of corporations will pay out bonuses from the previous year in March. And that's a big time where things start opening up. So it's just a matter of staying active, knowing what your own timing is, and being a little bit patient during the times that may be slow for the companies that you're looking at. Okay, another question I've gotten is, this one's interesting, and I talk to clients about this a lot. I know I want something, but I'm not really sure what I want. That is, even the higher you go in an organization, sometimes that becomes even more of an issue because something that you may have had your eye on, things have changed, that kind of thing. So it's really, in a way, it's good because it may mean that you're open to multiple possibilities, but it requires a little bit of work on your part to figure out what that thing is. And that's where you can go back to the exercise that I mentioned I do with a lot of clients, in terms of dreaming about their ideal scenario and thinking about things even beyond what they may be, sort of in the expected path, if you will, and just thinking about different dynamics of a company you might want to look at, or the nature of the work. Like, let yourself dream and get kind of crazy, and then think about what really, what you react to, what you get excited about, or what, just isn't all that interesting. Doing some of that kind of crazy thinking sometimes can lead you to some interesting places. And I think doing it with someone else, or even a small group of people that you can brainstorm, and it just unlocks possibilities that you can't possibly think of on your own. So I would say, if you're not sure what you want, it's time to talk to other people. It's time to do a little bit of dreaming, and just let yourself think about possibilities. And sometimes following what may be in the expected career path may lead you to something else. So don't let it hold you back, but do some dreaming, do some wishing, and see where that can take you. Okay, another question that I got, I've got two more. Another question that I got is, I see a lot of jobs that look interesting, but I don't feel qualified to apply. This is another area where sometimes we can get in our own way. There are, when I was an executive in a pharma company, I would take a lot of time in crafting the profile for a job that I was posting. What are the experiences that are needed? What are the qualifications that are must have, that are nice to have? It was the very rare occasion that the absolute ideal candidate that fit every element of that job showed up, posted for the job, and interviewed for the job. You're always making some trade-offs. So if you don't feel fully qualified, so what? Put your best foot forward. If you're meeting, 50% or more of the qualifications, you may have something intriguing about your background that separates you from others. It can't hurt to apply if it's somewhat realistic. If your experience is as a marketing director for a big tech company, it may be a big stretch to apply for, a VP of strategy in a scientific realm. I mean, so you got to be like in the same world. But why hold yourself back? Why not apply for the job and let them decide if you're qualified or not? I say dream big. And, there's no harm done in going for the jobs that look interesting for you. Apply for it, and then think about how you would communicate your qualifications and how you might close the gaps, that kind of thing. So, go for it and think about how you want to present yourself in that situation. And that's another area where talking to someone else can really, really help. A mentor, a friend, a coach, figure out how to position yourself for that situation. Okay, and the final question that I got along the lines of on this topic over the last couple of weeks is, how do I stay motivated to deliver in my current job while I'm looking? And I think it's a really important thing to be aware of. I mentioned it earlier. It's a dynamic that will happen. Once you've decided to go, you will see a lot of the things about your current job that you want to be moving away from. You will see a lot of the things that are dissatisfying for you. So it's really important to stay focused on what are the things you want to deliver on. What are your objectives? Have an action plan that you're moving towards. So things are specific and measurable, and you can tell if you're making progress. But be realistic. This isn't a time that you're going to feel like overachieving. You're not going to want to give 120% if you're also putting some energy into a search. So be really clear on what your priorities are. What are the things you must deliver on? The things that you're going to feel good about delivering on. Like at the end of the year, you want your performance appraisal to be something of which you're proud. You want your bonus to be something that you feel good about. You want to walk out feeling good about what you've delivered in that role, even if you're leaving soon. So identify really clearly what those priorities are so that you know what to deliver on, and you know what not to pay a lot of attention to, because you are going to be putting some time into a search. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Keep in mind too, we all need support. Every one of us needs someone to bounce ideas off of, to pick us up on the tough days, to help us see possibilities when we may be losing sight of them, and just to be that sounding board for ideas and how to move forward. So reach out to your friends, reach out to your colleagues, identify who are those people that can help you through those times. I have a bias that a coach is a great person to have. I've got a coach on my team, and I know what a difference that it makes for my clients as well. So let me know if I can help. Early in 2023, while my client roster is full right now, I'm anticipating a couple of openings and some new group coaching activity in 2023. So reach out to me if I can help, either through my LinkedIn or reach out to me on my website, and let's talk. You never know what possibilities exist until we get together and talk about it. So thank you for listening in. I really appreciate the questions that have been submitted to me in advance of this. I appreciate you engaging on the topic. And if you're watching this later and have additional questions or issues you want to talk about, I'd love to hear it. So feel free to reach out. So thanks. Wish you all the best.